We need to talk. I was kind of shocked by how much I've already talked about this episode elsewhere. In my analysis of What Can I Do For You alone, I talked about the majority of the key points to talk about in regards to this episode. I really don't think I need to say anything in this review.
Amethyst, give us some privacy.
Okay, fine. I'll talk about the episode again. Just don't be surprised if you've heard a lot of this stuff elsewhere on my channel. This is another Greg flashback episode, and it begins when, while sorting out and occasionally listening to Greg's records, Steven and Connie fuse into Stevonnie, and Greg sees them and is so psyched that they're able to fuse that he decides to tell Steven a story about his past. Greg's past, not Steven's past. And it is the story of how he once tried to fuse with Rose in an attempt to get to know her better and further their relationship. And there are three key things to talk about in regards to this episode, aside from the fact that he and Rose were not able to fuse, but you see that coming. The first is the song, What Can I Do For You, which I'm not going to get into too much detail here about because, like I said, I already analyzed the crap out of that thing. But at its basis level, it sets up the events of this episode by being a song about the fact that Rose and Greg have a sexual relationship and that Rose doesn't expect it to go any further than that. And yet by Greg's reactions to the lyrics that Rose chooses for the song, for her parts of the song, you can tell that that's not really what he was thinking. That he expected things to actually go further than that. Rose very clearly likes Greg. She really cares about him. She likes having him around. But from her perspective, their relationship has not had a romantic component. But I would argue that from his, up to this point, it has. That he has been interested in her romantically just as much as anything else. And if you don't glean just from the song that Rose wasn't, at this point, interested in a romantic relationship, then let's move on to talking point number 2, and that's Pearl. Not only did this episode lay the groundwork for everything that was definitively confirmed in regards to Pearl's feelings towards Rose and Pearl's relationship with Rose in the episode Mr. Greg during Pearl's song, but Pearl's reaction here, the way that she talks to Greg and says that he's just a passing interest, something that Rose will eventually forget about, proves that not only has Rose done this before, not only has she formed relationships with humans before, but they've never gone anywhere. In fact, Rose said it herself during the song. She's playing a part. She likes the way human beings play, and she's playing along. Which brings us to talking point number 3, and that's Rose herself. During the scene where Greg actually tries to fuse with Rose without telling her first, after the attempt to fuse fails, they start actually talking, which is what they needed to do in the first place. And it kind of hits both of them in that moment what the other one wants, and Greg has one of those, oh, dear God, how could I have been so dumb as not to see this moments? But it's Rose's reactions here that are really interesting, because you can tell that as literally superior as she is to humans, she still doesn't see herself as our equals. Not in that she sees herself as above us, in that she sees herself as something below humans. She even flat out says, I'm not a real person. She's been playing the role of a person and never thought she could actually be treated and accepted as a person, as an equal to a human being. And part of that stems from the guilt she feels regarding the war, and we now know that part of that guilt probably comes from the fact that she killed her own diamond. But I'm sure a lot of that also stems from the fact that she started a war that got a lot of gems killed. And while we know from Garnet's dialogue at the end of Bubbled that Rose did think that what she was doing was for the greater good, that doesn't mean Rose has to feel good about it. And you can tell from the end of this episode, the direction that their conversation is going, that furthering her relationship with Greg, learning to communicate better with Greg, is helping her to move past this and to value herself more. Which is actually a lot more than I expected to have to say about this episode, because I didn't realize it when I was first rewatching the episode. I kind of ad-libbed a lot of that, to be honest. I didn't realize when I was first rewatching the episode that some of the later stuff we've gotten has really changed the context of this episode and added stuff to it. Bravo, Crooniverse, you snuck that character development right by me. Overall, this is a fantastic episode. It explores the characters of Rose and young Greg when he was in a relationship with Rose, more so than any other episode up to this point. And by this point, I mean the end of the current run of episodes, not literally this episode that I'm reviewing. And while I liked Greg the Babysitter, while it was a fine episode and a good flashback episode, I don't feel like it did as much for these characters as this episode did, and I would really like to see another flashback episode of the caliber of this one. But guys, what did you think of this episode? Let's get a discussion going in the comments section down below. Either way, this has been AJ22, and I will talk to you guys later.